Hey Saab people, in today's video, I'm going to give you a complete overview of the PCV system on the 2.8 engine and how to set up a catch can to modify the system to make it work better. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Javen, but you probably know me best as Solving Saab. Before we get into it, there's a couple of thank yous I need to send out. The first one goes to the sponsor of today's video, Scanifab. Recently, Kieran reached out to me and offered to send me his new valve port kit that he just designed for this car. He actually sent it out before the kit was ever officially released, so I could do the testing and make this video for you guys. So thanks a lot, Kieran. I'm really enjoying the kit. The second thank you goes out to Patrick at Chuck Beaverton Motor Works. Patrick has been messaging back and forth with me for a couple of weeks, helping me to understand the PCV system and all of the testing and modifications he's done on his Turbo X in the past. A lot of the work you're going to see in this video is directly possible because he shared his knowledge with me. So thanks a lot, Patrick. I really appreciate it. So what is the PCV system? PCV stands for positive crankcase ventilation. To put it simply, as your engine is running and the fuel is combusting, combustion gases sneak their way past the piston rings down into your crankcase. These gases are full of hydrocarbons and stuff that can gunk up your oil really bad. The idea of the PCV system is to vent these gases out of the crankcase and allow fresh air to move in. These gases are sucked out of the crankcase and put back into the intake to be reburned for emissions purposes. The PCV system also maintains slight vacuum on your crankcase at all times to help keep your engine sealed. Keeping vacuum on the crankcase has a ton of benefits. It helps the moisture inside your oil burn off at a lower temperature. It prevents the oxidation of oil, increasing your oil life and decreasing the wear on your engine. It also increases your piston ring sealing efficiency, which keeps your combustion more efficient. Let me show you how it flows on the 2.8 engine using a diagram. Here's your oil dipstick tube, here's your front valve cover, rear valve cover, intake manifold, and all of the lines associated with the PCV system. Your dipstick tube serves as the fresh air intake to your crankcase as gases are sucked out by this port and this port on your valve covers or camshaft covers, whichever you would like to call them. On idle, your rear connection is working to keep the crankcase on vacuum, and it allows the cycling of hydrocarbons back into the intake. It does this using intake manifold vacuum. The two ports where combustion gases vent out only work one at a time. So let's start on the rear at idle. When the car is on idle, you can see that this connection here is connected to the intake manifold and it is connected to your brake booster line. So what this is doing is it's keeping vacuum on the crankcase to give you all the benefits I talked about before. Since the intake manifold is providing vacuum on the crankcase, it's also sucking all of the hydrocarbons out using this connection. As you can see, there's a third port on this connection. This connection has a built-in venturi, which uses the difference in pressure to supply the brake booster as a third connection, because you can see here, it's already connected to your intake manifold and connected to the vacuum pump. So this system in the rear is only working on idle. As soon as the car goes into boost, this system closes and the front port opens, allowing the pressure drop inside your intake as the turbo works to pull crankcase gases from the front port. On boost, front is open, back is closed. On idle, front is closed, back is open. So why are we modifying this? What are the flaws in the system? Well, for starters, this system in the back is very complicated and difficult to work around. This diagram I drew doesn't do it justice. It's very difficult to do rear coil packs and spark plugs on this car. These lines are brittle and susceptible to breaking. There's a ton of them to work around and they're just irritating and in the way. The other issue with the rear is that it leaves the internals of your valve cover / camshaft cover all gunked up, whereas the front stays a lot more clean. The issue with the front of the system is that the hydrocarbons and oil vapors exiting the crankcase when you are on boost fill this pipe up with oil. So why does the rear valve cover get so gunked up? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First, you need to understand that when the back is open, the vacuum pulling oil mist and hydrocarbons into the intake manifold through the rear is stronger than when that back system is closed and the front is open because it's on boost. So as I said, more oil mists and hydrocarbons are going through the rear when the system is on idle. So what ends up happening is as you start to drive the car and there's a pressure drop in the front intake, the back system closes. So all those oil mists and hydrocarbons are covering all of that stuff in the back and it's just trapped there. We also can't forget that the 2.8 V6 is mounted transversely inside the engine bay, so the rear valve cover is right against the firewall. It's basically a strong insulator with very little airflow around the engine bay. So more oil and gunk in the rear and heat, it's just going to cake up on there. So what can we do to combat all of the issues I just told you about? Well, we'll have to modify the system. I'm going to show you guys 3 different systems systems utilizing a catch can to get these issues sorted. The first one is very simple. You're just going to add a catch can into the front bank. This catch can setup will help you with the oil getting caught up in the intake tract of your turbo, and it will store it inside of a catch can, but it will not fix any of the rear issues that you're seeing. The second and the third I'm going to show you are both complete redesigns of how the system is routed, but one of them is going to be for a drag car only, and the other is a complete overhaul of the system that I recommend on a stock car, a street car, or a race car. The difference is that the setup is a bit more complicated. So let's get right into our setups, and I will talk about them when we're there. So for the basic setup, let's go over what we're gonna need. You're gonna need a catch can. This is just a $25 catch can off Amazon. It's just a 2-port. You'll need a bunch of high temp silicone hose. No matter what your setup is, you don't need to touch this. Leave the tube with the check valve coming off of the dipstick port that plugs into this hole. Leave that alone. So what we're going to focus on is right here. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and just take off this hose from the boost solenoid right there, just to make things a little bit easier to get around. Take a 10 millimeter, undo this bolt right here. Now go ahead and slide this off gently right there. Now what you're going to do is lift up on this very gently. It should pop right out, but this hose is going to be made of a very brittle plastic, so yours is not going to flex like this. Gently pull out on this right here and take off the tube. Now this is going to be made of a brittle plastic hose. You don't need to save the tubing that's in the middle. You can snap that hose in half, but you do need to save the 2 ends that are on it. I'll show you how to get that plastic off. Everybody's is gonna be a little different. If your stuff isn't very brittle, it's gonna take more cutting. You can see the barbed fitting sticking out right here. I'm gonna shave it down a little bit. Alternatively, you can also use a heat gun if you have a good bit of the nylon tubing still hanging off, and you can pull it off. We'll be able to see now that more of the barb is exposed, and there's like a jacket on the outside. That's exactly how we want to be. The side of the nylon that is separated from the barb, and then give it a little squeeze. Basically just kind of peel it. If you take your knife and you make an imprint down the side, just cut into it, like cut into it straight on just a little bit. That right there is where it's going to break first when you start peeling. I'm gonna hold the side of the nylon with my thumb so it can't twist away. Just gonna squeeze. Squeeze, and then just start rolling it up. So once we get to the end, we can just kind of cut into it. There it is, snapped in half. You should have your stock check valve, and you should have this. This plugs into the top of your turbo here. Make sure your catch can has a built-in filter. Right in here. See this little cap? It's got a filtration section in there. You can untwist this steel wool that you shove in there. Your catch can is going to have an in and an out. The in section is going to be coming straight off of the valve cover. The out is going to go straight to your turbo. This barbed fitting, put it right back in the hole where it belongs. Boom, shove that in the hole. Take your 3/8, plug it in here. Just like that. Put a clamp on it. Take this. You're gonna want this to be your in section of the catch can. You're gonna wanna cut your hose length based on where you want your catch can to sit. If you want it to sit up here, you're gonna want nice long hoses. I typically have mine shoved over here. Plug this onto this fitting here, just like this, and put this on the out portion of the catch can. Boop, right there. Now your catch can is set up. Very simple design. This setup will help reduce the amount of oil pooling inside of your intake pipe. It will also reduce the amount of impurities and moisture from re-entering the system. So for setups 2 and 3, we are going to need Scanifab's kit. The hose clamps here. Got some AN10 braided line that they sent to us just as a little spare in case we want to use this 90-degree angle setup on the rear valve cover. We have our piece that goes in the back of the intake manifold, and the beauty of this is it actually comes with 2 different connections. It comes with a plug right here so that you can close off the rear intake manifold, and that's the setup we're going to be using for the race car style. And for the third setup, we are going to need this port. They make this port right here on the back in case you want to set up a boost gauge inside the car, which we will be doing, but not using this directly. This right here is a blank that goes inside of the brake booster hose on the back to clear up some extra line. And these right here are our inserts for the valve covers. One for the front and one for the rear. You see it's got that Scanifab logo on there. Just love that. This is not all that you're going to need for the last 2 setups. You're also going to need, obviously, your catch can, and you're going to need line of some sort. Now, I elected to get AN10 braided line. This port right here is 14.3 millimeters in outside diameter, so we had to find something that's going to fit properly over these. This is 14 millimeter AN10 line. That's the inside diameter of the piping. So these are going to be a nice tight fit, but we are still going to use clamps on everything. The other thing we're going to need here are T's for our braided line. The reason that these are in plastic is because these were the closest fit that I could find for our line here. Unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to order brass or stainless components beforehand. I do heavily recommend using metal T's if you can get them. We're also going to need expansion couplings, just straight ones like that. Also going to need some check valves. These are UPR Pro Series valves. The reason I chose the Pro Series is because you can disassemble these and clean them if needed. We're also able to take out the spring on these and turn them into a 0 PSI check valve, which is exactly what we want. If any flow is coming in one direction, we want it to go. And if any flow comes from the other direction, we want it to immediately stop. And I'm going to connect a vacuum gauge to here to see how much vacuum the engine is pulling with the stock setups so that we can make sure we have the proper amount of vacuum on the engine. You can see the needle is just barely moving to the left. First, we're going to unbolt and remove the atmospheric pressure sensor. Then we're going to unbolt the ECM and slightly move it out of the way without tugging too hard because we don't want to hurt the wires. We just want to be able to expose this bracket back here. Let's go ahead and remove this top connection. There's a 10 millimeter nut right under the connection that we just undid right there. Go ahead and undo that. Once you have that little bolt out, go ahead and pull backward on this bracket right there, and that'll release it from the engine. Now what you'll want to do is go ahead and tug on this just towards the reservoir over there. Boop, just like that. We just want to release all this stuff. Just have it hanging loose so that none of it is on the hook for breaking at all. So go ahead and undo your side connection over here. There's a little tab right here on the bottom. Open that by squeezing it and then pull off of the venturi, and you push it off of the venturi. What I would recommend is doing this job when the engine is cold so that there's no vacuum. Otherwise, this connection right here is going to have a ton of vacuum on it when you disconnect it. So what you do is you squeeze the white tab over here and you pull it off of the venturi. We have exposed the connection that goes to the valve cover right there. So I'm going to put on our nice shiny new Scanifab ports front and rear. You are going to want to wet this O-ring with just a tad bit of oil. Really hot, so I'm trying to be careful here. Oh, and it's really not easy to take out either. I'm very, very pleasantly surprised. All right, let's get that front one in there. Oh, there we go. When you get the rear reconstructed, you're going to want to check your O-ring as these leak all the time. So this is the racing setup that we're working on currently. For your rear manifold block, you are not going to want the nozzle on there unless you are running a boost gauge inside the vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and thread in this adapter right here. Just go till it's like hand tight, no problem. So since your venturi is already removed, all you have to do is pull up on this line out of the bracket. See right here, it slides upward out of the bracket. Got it right here. Head right back into the same spot, right there. There we go. Alrighty, we've got our blank. Let's go ahead and put it in this line right here. Let's get our bolt back in on the rear of the intake manifold. Look at all the space you've opened up back there to work on stuff. I mean, obviously your atmospheric pressure sensor is still going to sit there. I've set this up as temporary just to show you the connections you need to make. So for the drag setup only, you don't need any check valves. And the reason is because we have deleted every connection that puts this system on vacuum. So you don't need to worry about boosting your crankcase at all, having anything on the inside explode. That doesn't exist in this scenario because you have deleted the system from vacuum. Teed the rear and the front together right here, and we have gone to the in section. The out goes directly to the turbo. In this setup, we've achieved the best access behind the engine bay for maintenance. The front and rear ports will have gases pulled at the same time, but this will only occur on boost when the turbo causes a pressure drop in the intake pipe. The flow won't be very strong. The turbo doesn't pull enough boost to keep the crankcase on vacuum, so we're going to lose all the benefits of crankcase vacuum entirely. You'll see more moisture in the system and engine wear. To run this setup, I only recommend using a car that's on full boost 99% of the time, like a drag car that has a proper built engine. On this setup, you'll need oil changes much more frequently. You'll need to do oil analysis to determine the intervals. Do not put this setup on a street car. The third setup is much more complicated than the first or the second. It by far requires the most work. It will definitely pay off. We're gonna be pulling from both front and rear valve covers at the same time, and they're either both going to be going into the intake manifold on idle, or they will both be going through the turbo into the intake manifold on full boost. But this system does require inline check valves, one on the intake manifold side, and it is going to require one to the turbo feed side. Since we're directly hooking up intake manifold vacuum to the catch can system, we are going to have to restrict it. Otherwise, we're going to put way too much vacuum on the crankcase and it will blow out all of our seals and make things terrible. Let's get into how we're going to route this, and then I'll go over check valves and all that lovely stuff. The port that goes to our intake manifold, you're going to want to leave the nipple that is supplied in there. So we're going to put this back on. Hand tight will do it. So just like I showed you before, you're going to take the old check valve out and you're going to throw this blank in there. Tighten down the bolt that's back here. Blank inside the brake booster. Plug in your vacuum line for the brake booster that goes back here. We'll eventually put back our atmospheric pressure sensor and put back our ECM. Just to ease your understanding, I'm going to put the catch can and run the lines in a way that you guys can see it very easily. I'm going to reroute this later to keep the lines away from heat because it is going to affect the system. So here's our front port, here's our T. The T goes to the rear port. So the in section is pulling from both valve covers into the in on our catch can. So the out is where things are going to get a little more complicated. So we're gonna need some line coming off the top of the turbo. We're going to have to put in our check valve. And you want the check valve pointing towards the turbo because the turbo is gonna build boost. And you wanna be able to breathe through the check valve that way. You don't want the check valve to blow through the other way. Won't go. Alrighty, once you have that check valve in line, you're now going to need a T right here. You're gonna take one side of your T, plug it into the outflow. We also want outflow connected to the intake manifold so that the intake manifold is constantly pulling vacuum on the crankcase so we don't lose any of the benefits of crankcase vacuum. Let me show you how we're gonna set up vacuum in the back. So your third tube coming off the T, now what we need to do is be able to fit a check valve in line. But the problem here is that if we just hook up a check valve and then hook up a vacuum line, number one, this doesn't even fit. The second thing that's most important, and this will blow up your engine, is we can't just connect straight vacuum from the intake manifold to this system. You will suck all the seals right out of your engine. So we need to also put in an inline restrictor. So we've now put in our check valve, and we want it facing the intake manifold because when the intake manifold starts sucking, this check valve will open and it's going to put vacuum on this system, and this one up here will close because we are going to be on idle. It is essentially making the system work one connection at a time. So after our check valve, we're going to need a straight connection. But now, because we have this straight connection, we're actually going to be able to add a restrictor into this, and I will show you how. I went to the store and I bought a sunk plug right here. So the sunk plug right here fits damn perfectly in there because the end has a small taper. So what we're going to do is take an Allen key tool and we're going to make sure it's nice and straight, and we're going to start threading it in. We've got it in there pretty good. Now what we're going to do, we are going to punch a 1/16 inch hole through that. Very tiny. Let me see if I can find something for reference. Here's a regular shop pick just from Harbor Freight that I had to pick up as an extra. That is how small this is. Side-by-side comparison, they're about the same size. We really want to restrict the absolute shit out of this. Beautiful. There you have it. The line coming off of the back of the intake manifold from Scanifab is very, very small. It's meant to go to an aftermarket boost gauge. So what we're going to have to do is match the line size. What I went to the store and grabbed is a barbed connector, which should fit perfectly inside this hole, and it will go to 1/4 inch line. I decided brute force was necessary. I just used a hammer with a little bit of lubricant and I got it in there. Fits perfectly. So we've got a restrictor and it will connect to 1/4 inch. Let's get our vacuum restrictor / reducer set up inside this tubing. Now we need to take some small high temp silicone hose, put it on both connections, and there we go. We've now finished our prototype. And yes, it looks absolutely terrible. I'm gonna cut some AN10 line and I will show you the final setup. I'm running my lines now. Make sure you're using hose clamps. Right now, the pipe work on the front looks a little bit elementary, I guess. Get this system tested for about a week, and then I'll come back with some results, see what I catch in the can. But the idea here wasn't that it necessarily looked good. The idea is to give you guys the fundamentals of what needs to be in this system in an easily visible space so that you know how to set it up. With the car running, I can hear a ton of sucking coming from the back, but it turns out that it was actually just the noise coming through the silicone line. So that noise, I was tracing down this noise, taking apart every single vacuum line, and noise would not go away until I went like this. What it is the restrictor that we put into place is just after this line, so we're hearing the vacuum fighting its way to work through this line, which is perfectly okay. With it warmed up now, we will throw this on the vacuum gauge here. Almost to the Z on 0. And when I release the pressure, it goes back over the E. You can see the needle is just barely moving to the left. Final notes from me, the 1/16 of an inch restrictor is technically a little bit too big. It's pulling more vacuum on the system than stock, but I've talked to other Saab experts and they think that it's okay. Something I forgot to state in the video is get a catch can that does not vent to atmosphere unless you are big turbo. If you have a big turbo Saab and you don't have a front intake pipe, then you're just gonna have to pull from the front port and the rear port and have the catch can vent to atmosphere. If you stuck with me all the way through the video, thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe. I'm trying to get the channel to 2,000 subs before summer, and I'm trying to get monetized on the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.